When you want a rustic apple dessert that leaves you sinking back in your chair, you want this apple galette. In this video, I'll show you how to make this gorgeous gem bursting with apple goodness, a delectable flaky crust kissed with crunchy turbinado sugar, and drizzled with preserves to caramelize as it bakes. So grab a cup of hot cocoa. It's time to bake some magic in Mrs. Kringle's kitchen. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click the bell so that you can get more delicious recipes. For returning subscribers, welcome back to my kitchen. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees. For the first part of this recipe, you'll need 3 of the 4 tablespoons of turbinado or coarse sugar, 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, plus more for rolling, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. In a large mixing bowl, add 5 John Gold or Granny Smith apples that have been peeled, cored, and sliced to a ½ an inch thick. Add the lemon juice, the sugar, cinnamon, and 1 of the 2 tablespoons of flour, and give the apples a toss. Then add the last of the flour and toss to coat and set aside. Have a 1/4 cup of your favorite preserves handy. I'm using a peach mango for a slight contrast, but apricot would also work nicely. You'll need 1 large beaten egg, some flour for your work surface, some turbinado or coarse sugar for your crust, and of course your refrigerated crust. I'll put a link to the super easy pie crust that I use in the description below. Flour your work surface, and oh yeah, it might be a good time to take off rings if you're wearing them. Lightly flour your cold crust and begin rolling it. It'll need to be large, between like 15 to 16 inches round. You'll want to have your lined baking sheet ready to go. Gently roll the crust over your rolling pin for an easy transfer. Line up the crust and unroll it onto the baking sheet, like so. Grab your preserves and begin spreading it over the middle part of the crust. Begin layering the apples in the middle over the preserves, making sure to leave about 2 to 2½ inches along the side of the crust so that it can be folded. If you want to make a pretty design with the apples, go for it, but it's not necessary. Begin gently folding in the edges of the pie crust, slightly overlapping the previous piece as you go. Give everything a nice little tuck to make sure that it's pinched into place. Add any remaining juices from the apples into the 2 tablespoons of preserves and stir it together. Drizzle it over the top of the apples if you'd like it to caramelize as it bakes, or if you prefer, you can brush it over the top of the apples when it's done baking. Brush the beaten egg over the crust to give a beautiful golden color while baking. The egg is also going to give our coarse sugar something to stick to when we sprinkle it on the crust. To quote my friend, "Holy Moses on a bicycle, that looks good." Bake for 55 to 60 minutes or until the apples are fork tender. Let it rest for 10 minutes before diving in. An apple galette is a beautiful rustic way to get that classic apple pie taste. One could argue that the apples are begging to be topped with cinnamon ice cream, but that's up to you. Of course, caramel and apple are a classic combo, so if some caramel sauce found its way onto your slice, you probably wouldn't be sad. For the full printable recipe and more, go to mrskringleskitchen.com. Subscribe and share the love with your foodie friends.